You'll die broke, just like your pathetic mother." Michael Dorsey screamed at the single mother who just discovered $2.45 million in bearer bonds hidden behind the crumbling wall of room sept, plus the hotel he'd forced her to buy. But before we get to that moment of reckoning, let me take you back to where it all began. The foreclosure notice felt like sandpaper in Nicole Martinez's hands, red letters screaming across white paper. Final notice. Eviction proceedings to begin November 20. She stood in the cramped kitchen of the apartment she'd called home for 3 years. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. Her 6-year-old daughter Lily, asleep in the only bedroom. The digital clock on the microwave blinked 11:47 de l'après-midi. In 13 minutes, it would be October 29th. 5 days until they'd be on the street. Nicole's hands trembled as she set the notice on the counter next to the other bills. Medical debt from Lily's emergency appendectomy last year. Wheat $4 still outstanding. Credit card statements for groceries and school supplies maxed out at $3.2. Her student loan payment 2 months overdue. Whit sent $47. And now this $6 in back rent she simply didn't have. Her paycheck from the Riverside diner sat in her purse. A cat $7 after taxes for 2 weeks of work. The second job at the dry cleaner had cut her hours last month when business slowed. Between both jobs, she was pulling in maybe $1 a month. It wasn't enough. It had never been enough. Nicole walked to Lily's doorway and watched her daughter sleep, curled around the stuffed rabbit that used to be white, but was now gray from years of loving. Lily's school uniform, the one Nicole washed every other night, so she'd always look clean, hung on the back of the chair. Her backpack, held together with duct tape, leaned against the wall. 6 years old, and already too familiar with phrases like, "We can't afford that," and maybe, "next month." 6 years old, and growing up in a world where her mother worked 70 hours a week, and it still wasn't enough. Nicole's phone buzzed. A text from her landlord, Michael Dorsey. "Don't think I've forgotten. Friday at noon. Cash, or you're out. Michael Dorsey." The name alone made her stomach clench. He owned half the rental properties in Clearwater Falls, and he ran them like a slumlord empire. Broken heaters that took months to fix. Mold in the bathrooms he refused to address. Rent increases every year that pushed people to the brink, but he smiled at city council meetings and donated to the police benevolent fund, so everyone thought he was a pillar of the community. Only his tenants knew the truth. Nicole had been late with rent twice before, once when Lily was sick, once when her car broke down. Each time, Michael had shown up personally to collect, his cologne overpowering in the small apartment, his eyes cataloging everything she owned like he was already planning the eviction sale. "You know what your problem is," he'd said during the last visit, leaning against her kitchen counter like he owned it. Which, legally, he did. "You make poor choices. Bad job, no education, single mother. You're a statistic, Nicole. And statistics don't get second chances." She'd bitten her tongue so hard, she'd tasted blood. But now, staring at the foreclosure notice, she wondered if he'd been right. Maybe she was just a statistic. Maybe this was all she'd ever be. Her laptop sat open on the kitchen table, a 5-year-old model that took 3 minutes to boot up and occasionally died mid-sentence. She'd been searching for apartments she could afford. The results were depressing. Everything in her price range was either too far from Lily's school, in neighborhoods where she'd never feel safe, or run by landlords who wouldn't rent to someone with her credit score. The Facebook tab was still open from earlier. She'd been scrolling through her high school classmates' lives. They were posting about vacations and new cars and their children's soccer tournaments. Nicole hadn't posted in 2 months. What would she say? excited to be evicted, living my best life in poverty. She closed the laptop and picked up the local newspaper someone had left at the diner. She was about to toss it when a small classified ad caught her eye. Public auction, flood-damaged property. The Clearwater Grand Hotel du Saint-Cinq River Street. Starting bid, $8 October 20th. Dick. 00 am sold. As is. No warranties. Nicole's breath caught. The Clearwater Grand. She knew that building. Everyone in town did. It had been the crown jewel of downtown, back in the Mille Neuf, Cent 40 Secondes, and 50 Secondes, a 4-story Art Deco masterpiece, where movie stars had stayed and presidents had given speeches. But that was before the interstate bypassed the town in 1968, before the factories closed in the 80 Secondes, before the last owner died in 2015, and the building had sat vacant and rotting for 8 years. Then came the flood. 3 months ago, the Clearwater River had jumped its banks after 2 days of torrential rain. The downtown had been underwater for nearly a week. When the waters receded, they left behind destroyed businesses, ruined homes, and a town trying to figure out how to rebuild. The Clearwater Grand had taken the worst of it. The first floor had been completely submerged. Nicole had driven past it last week, windows broken, water stains reaching halfway up the second floor, yellow condemned signs plastered across the boarded-up entrance. Eat. Cents. Dollars. She had $8.43 in her checking account. The money she'd been planning to give Michael on Friday, hoping it would buy her another week to come up with the rest. It was insane. Completely, utterly insane. The building was probably beyond saving. She didn't know anything about real estate, or construction, or business. She'd be throwing away the last money she had on a building that would likely cost hundreds of thousands to repair. But something in her chest tightened as she stared at the ad. The Clearwater Grand. She remembered going there once as a child, before it closed. Her mother had taken her to some community event in the ballroom. Nicole remembered marble floors and chandeliers, and feeling like she'd stepped into a palace. Her mother, dead now, for 4 years from cancer. They'd caught too late because she'd skipped checkups she couldn't afford. Her mother, who'd worked 3 jobs and still died with nothing but debt to her name. Her mother, who'd spent her last coherent day in hospice, holding Nicole's hand and whispering, "Don't be afraid to take chances. Don't live small just because the world tells you that's all you deserve." Nicole looked at the foreclosure notice, at the bills, at the sleeping daughter, in the next room, who deserved so much better. $8 for a condemned hotel that everyone had given up on. Or $8 as a down payment on another month of being Michael Dorsey's tenant, another month of barely surviving, another month of living small. She made a decision that would change everything. The October morning was crisp and grey, threatening rain that hadn't quite committed. Nicole stood on the sidewalk across from the Clearwater Grand, Lily's hand warm in hers. The little girl was bundled in a jacket, 2 sizes too big, a hand-me-down from a neighbor, her eyes wide as she took in the massive building. "Is that really a hotel, Mama?" "It used to be, baby. It looks sad." Nicole's throat tightened. "Yeah, it does." The building was worse than she'd remembered. 4 stories of Art Deco architecture slowly collapsing. The flood had left a brown waterline halfway up the second floor. Windows were broken or missing entirely. The ornate entrance, which had once boasted brass doors and a marble portico, was boarded up with plywood spray-painted with warnings. Danger. No. Trespassing. Structural damage. But Nicole could still see what it had been. The geometric patterns in the faded facade, the gargoyles and decorative flourishes, the ghost of gold leaf on the letters that spelled out Clearwater Grand Hotel above the cellophane. Entrance. A small crowd had gathered near the front steps, where a man in a cheap suit was setting up a portable podium. If you find this story engaging, Please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Nicole recognized several faces. Harold Chen, from the hardware store. Patricia Vance, who ran the Historical Society. Tom Brennan, the real estate developer who'd bought up half of downtown during the flood recovery, flipping damaged properties for profit. And there, standing apart from the others, with his arms crossed and a smirk on his face, was Michael Dorsey. Nicole's stomach dropped. What was he doing here? As if sensing her stare, Michael turned, and his smirk widened into a grin. He walked over, expensive shoes crunching on the debris-littered sidewalk. Well, Nicole Martinez, shouldn't you be at work, or are you taking time off from your very important career as a waitress? Lily pressed closer to Nicole's leg. Nicole kept her voice steady. I'm here for the auction. Michael's laugh was sharp and cruel. The auction? You can't even afford your rent. And you're going to bid on a condemned building? He looked around to make sure people were listening. They were. This is going to be entertaining. Leave us alone, Michael. It's Mr. Dorsey to you. And I'm not doing anything wrong. Just watching a disaster in real time. He leaned in close, his voice dropping. You have until noon. Friday, Nicole. I want every penny, or I'm filing eviction papers and a lawsuit for back rent. And trust me, the judge is a personal friend. He walked away, still chuckling. Several people had overheard. Nicole could see them whispering, pointing. She recognized the look pity mixed with contempt. Poor single mother. Doesn't know any better. Making bad choices again. The auctioneer, a tired-looking man named Paul Hendricks, tapped the microphone. All right, folks, let's get started. We're here for the public auction of the property known as the Clearwater Grand Hotel, located at Deux Saint-Cinq River Street. Property is being sold as is, where is, with no warranties, express or implied. Buyer is responsible for all inspections, permits, and compliance with city codes. He paused, looking at the building with something like sadness. The Clearwater Grand was built in 1948, and served as one of the premier hotels in the region for over 30 years. Property sustained significant damage in the September flood and has been condemned by the city. Starting bid is $800. Do I have $800? Silence. Nicole looked around. No one was raising their hand. Tom Brennan was shaking his head. Harold Chen looked sympathetic, but didn't move. Patricia Vance was photographing the building, but clearly not bidding. Come on, folks. Paul tried again. $800 for a historic property in the heart of downtown. Think of the potential once the flood recovery is complete. Think of the liability, someone muttered. Think of the mold, another voice added. Michael Dorsey laughed loudly. Think of the poor sucker who buys it. Paul sighed. Going once at $800. Nicole's hand shook as she raised it. $800. Every head turned. The whispers became an audible buzz. Is that? It's the waitress from Riverside. She's serious? With what money? Michael Dorsey's voice cut through the murmurs, loud and mocking. Oh, this is perfect. Absolutely perfect. Nicole, you're about to make the biggest mistake of your pathetic life. Paul looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, do you understand the condition of this property? The structural damage, the mold, I understand, Nicole interrupted. Her voice was quieter than she wanted, but steady. $800. Anyone else? Paul scanned the crowd hopefully. No other hands. Tom Brennan was actively shaking his head, going once, going twice. He looked at Nicole one more time, giving her a chance to back out. She nodded firmly. Sold to the lady with the little girl for $800. The crowd erupted in laughter and disbelief. She's insane. That building's going to fall down in the next storm. Someone should call child services, letting a kid near that death trap. Michael Dorsey pushed through the crowd, still laughing. This is beautiful. This is absolutely beautiful. You know what, Nicole? I'm gonna do you a favor. I'm gonna waive the back rent. Consider it a gift. His eyes were cruel. Because you're going to need every penny for the tetanus shots when that building collapses on you. He looked around at the crowd, playing to them. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the new owner of Clearwater's biggest pile of rubble. Let's give her a round of applause for the single dumbest investment in this town's history. Some people actually clapped. Others just shook their heads and walked away. Still laughing, Patricia Vance approached as the crowd dispersed. She was one of the few not laughing. Nicole, I mean this kindly, but do you know what you've just done? That building is structurally unsound. The mold alone could cost $50,000 to remediate. The plumbing, electrical, everything, it's all destroyed. I know it looks bad. It doesn't look bad. It is bad. Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. I've been documenting the flood damage for the Historical Society. That building should be demolished, not restored. Please, for your daughter's sake, walk away. You can probably get the city to refund your $0.20 dollars if you act quickly. Nicole looked at the Clearwater Grand. At the water stains and broken windows and peeling facade. She should walk away. Everyone was right, she'd just made the worst financial decision of her life. But she thought of her mother's last words, of living small, of another month in Michael Dorsey's apartment, another month of being stepped on. Thank you for your concern, Nicole said. But the building is mine now. I'm going to make it work. Patricia sighed and walked away, shaking her head. Paul Hendricks approached with paperwork. Ma'am, I need you to sign here, here, and here. You'll receive the deed within 2 weeks, once the payment clears and the city processes the transfer. He lowered his voice. Look, I'm not supposed to say this, but you should seriously consider what everyone's telling you. This building is dangerous. I've seen the inspection reports. It's not just flood damage. The previous owner let it deteriorate for years. There are structural issues that predate the flood. Are you saying the sale isn't legitimate? No, it's completely legal. I'm just saying. He trailed off, then shrugged. It's your money, your decision. Nicole signed the papers with hands that had stopped shaking. She'd crossed a line now. No going back. Lily tugged her hand. Mama, why were those people being mean? Sometimes people are afraid of things they don't understand, baby. Are you afraid? Nicole knelt down, looking her daughter in the eyes. Terrified. But sometimes, being scared means you're about to do something important. They walked to the front of the building. The plywood, covering the entrance, had a gap where boards had come loose. Nicole pried it wider and squeezed through, then helped Lily inside. The lobby took her breath away. Even in ruins, it was magnificent. The floor was buried under inches of dried mud and flood debris, but she could see the marble underneath, black and white in a geometric pattern. The walls still held traces of Art Deco murals, though most of the plaster had crumbled away. A grand staircase curved up to the second floor, its brass banister green, with tarnish but intact. Light streamed through the broken windows, creating cathedral-like beams through the dust. Chandeliers hung askew from water-damaged ceiling, their crystal prisms still catching the light and throwing rainbows across the ruined walls. It's beautiful, Lily whispered. Nicole squeezed her hand. It will be again. But first, she had to figure out where they were going to sleep tonight. The first night in the Clearwater Grand, Nicole and Lily slept in her car, parked behind the building. Nicole had tried 3 motels, but her credit card was declined at all of them. The camping sleeping bags she'd bought years ago for a trip they'd never taken kept them warm enough, but neither slept much. Every sound made Nicole jump. Every shadow looked like someone coming to tell her what a mistake she'd made. By dawn, she'd made a decision. They'd stay in the hotel. It was dangerous and probably illegal, but it was theirs, and dangerous was still better than begging Michael Dorsey for more time. She spent the first day exploring, trying to understand what she'd bought. The first floor was a disaster, mud-caked, mold-growing, structurally questionable, but the second floor was better. Some water damage, but largely intact. The third and fourth floors were dry, untouched by the flood. She found a room on the third floor, room 14, that still had a working door and intact windows. It smelled of dust and age, but not mold. She and Lily scrubbed it clean, with supplies Nicole bought with her last $40. They laid out sleeping bags on the floor. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. The next morning, Nicole dropped Lily at school like everything was normal, then went to work her shift at the Riverside Diner. She moved through the routine on autopilot, refilling coffee and taking orders while her mind spun with impossible questions. How would she pay for repairs? Where would she even start? What had she been thinking? "Heard you bought the Grand, Ronnie," one of the line cooks said during her break. "That true?" Word traveled fast in small towns. "Yeah. Damn girl. That's either really brave or really stupid. Haven't figured out which yet." "Neither have I." She worked a double shift noon to 9 p.m., then picked up Lily from the after-school program she could barely afford. They ate $1 menu burgers in the car, then drove back to the hotel. This became their routine. School and work during the day, exploring the hotel at night. Nicole used her phone's flashlight to map the building, floor by floor, room by room. She took notes on what needed immediate attention: electrical, plumbing, structural supports. The numbers made her want to cry. Even conservative estimates put the restoration cost at $0.02. She had Trent's $6 in her checking account, but there was something about the building that kept her going. Walking those halls at night, Lily's hand in hers, she could almost hear what it had been. Laughter in the ballroom, jazz music from the lounge, the ghost of better days whispering that maybe, just maybe, they could come again. It was on the fifth night, while exploring the second floor, that things changed. Nicole was checking rooms, marking which ones had the worst water damage, when she noticed something odd about room sept. Unlike the other rooms, which had simple locks, room sept had a heavy deadbolt. And unlike the other rooms, which she could open with the master key Paul Hendricks had given her, this one didn't budge. "Why won't it open, Mama?" "I don't know, baby." Nicole tried the master key again. Nothing. She examined the door more closely. The wood around the frame looked different, newer, like someone had reinforced it years after the original construction. She made a note to come back with proper tools. The next day was Saturday. No work, no school. Nicole and Lily spent the day at the public library, using the free internet to research historic hotel renovations and grant programs. The librarian, a kind woman named Mrs. Kowalski, noticed what she was looking at. "You bought the Clearwater Grand, didn't you?" Nicole braced for more mockery. "Yes, ma'am." "Good," Mrs. Kowalski said firmly. "That building deserves someone who'll fight for it. Here." She pulled several books from her cart. "These might help: History of Clearwater Falls, Historic Preservation in Small Towns, Art Deco Architecture. And this," she handed over a slim volume with a black and white photo of the hotel on the cover. "Local history from the 1940 and 50. The Grand features prominently." "Thank you," Nicole said, overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Nicole read the history book by flashlight. She learned that the Clearwater Grand had opened in 1941, financed by a businessman named Howard Ashford. It had been an immediate success, drawing wealthy travelers from Chicago and St. Louis. But in 1963, something changed. There was a brief mention. Howard Ashford died mysteriously in November 1963. The hotel was sold shortly after to new ownership, though records remain unclear about the transaction. Nicole flipped through more pages, but there was nothing else about Ashford or the hotel's ownership. She was about to close the book when a loose photograph fell out. It showed the hotel in its glory days, pristine and gleaming. But it was the writing on the back that made her breath catch. Howard Ashford, Room Sept, November 1963. We never found it. JKH. Never found what? The next morning, Nicole returned to Room Sept with the toolbox she'd bought at a yard sale. The lock still wouldn't open, but the hinges were old and accessible. After an hour of work, she managed to remove the pins. The door swung inward with a groan of protest. Room Sept looked like all the others at first glance. Water-stained wallpaper, a bed frame with no mattress, faded curtains hanging in tatters. But then, Nicole noticed the wall. Behind where a painting had once hung, there was a section of wallpaper that didn't quite match. The pattern was the same, but the color slightly off, like it had been replaced decades after the original installation. Nicole approached slowly. She pressed her palm against the wall. It felt different, hollow. "Lily, step back, okay? Stay by the door." "What is it, Mama?" "I'm not sure yet." Nicole used a screwdriver to pry at the edge of the wallpaper. It came away in long strips, revealing plaster underneath. The plaster was newer than Renbat, the rest of the wall, patched over something. Her heart pounding, Nicole picked up a hammer from her toolbox. She hesitated only a moment before swinging at the patch. The plaster crumbled easily, revealing brick behind it. Old brick, part of the building's original construction. But someone had removed several bricks and created a cavity, then sealed it up. Nicole pulled away more plaster and more bricks. Her hands shook as she shined her flashlight into the dark space. There, nestled in the wall cavity like a secret waiting to be born, sat a metal safe. It was small, maybe 6 inches square and covered in decades of dust. But it was real. Nicole's mind raced. Howard Ashford, Room le 7 Novembre 1963. We never found it. She examined the safe. It had a combination lock, old-fashioned, probably from the 1962. The metal was tarnished but solid. "Mama, what is it?" "I think." Nicole's voice shook. "I think it's a safe. Like in movies? With treasure?" Nicole almost laughed. Treasure. In a condemned hotel she'd bought for wheat-cents dollars. But the photograph had said they never found it. What if there really was something inside? She spent the next 2 hours trying everything she could think of. Birth dates based on Howard Ashford's information from the history book. Common combinations. Random numbers. Nothing worked. Finally, exhausted, she sat on the dusty floor and really looked at the safe. There, scratched faintly into the metal near the dial, were 3 sets of numbers. 115, 63, le 15 Novembre, 1963. 8 days before Kennedy's assassination. The week Howard Ashford had died mysteriously. Nicole's hands trembled as she tried the combination. Right ons, left quinze, right 63. Click. The safe door swung open. Nicole aimed her flashlight inside, and her entire world tilted. Bearer bonds. Hundreds of them, stacked in neat bundles, each wrapped with rubber bands that had long since perished. She pulled out the first stack with trembling fingers. The bonds were printed on heavy paper, official seals and signatures still clear despite the decades. Each one bore the words, "Payable to bearer," and a denomination that made her dizzy, $1 million. She counted with shaking hands, 10 bonds in the first stack, then another stack, and another. Nicole's vision blurred as she tried to do the math. 20 stacks, some with 10 bonds, some with 15. The numbers swam before her eyes. 2 cent, 45 dollars, million. "Mama, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" Nicole looked at her daughter, then at the fortune in her hands, then back at her daughter. "We're okay, baby," she whispered. We're going to be okay. But even as she said it, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate, coming closer. Someone else knew about the safe, and they were coming to take it back. Nicole moved on instinct. She shoved the bonds back into the safe and pushed it closed, though it wouldn't lock from the outside. Then she grabbed Lily's hand and pressed a finger to her lips. The footsteps stopped. Outside room sept. "I know you're in there, Nicole." The voice was smooth, cultured, completely unfamiliar. The door's off its hinge. Not exactly subtle. Nicole looked around frantically. The room had no other exit. She was trapped. "I'm not here to hurt you," the voice continued. "Quite the opposite. My name is James Ashford. I'd like to speak with you about something my grandfather left behind." Ashford? Howard Ashford's grandson? Nicole stepped into the doorway, keeping Lily behind her. "Stay back." The man in the hallway was in his 60s, dressed in an expensive suit that looked absurd in the ruins of the hotel. He had silver hair, sharp eyes, and the bearing of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Ms. Martinez." He made no move. "To come closer. I apologize for startling you. I've been monitoring this property for a very long time, waiting for someone to finally buy it and start exploring." "Monitoring? You mean watching? Keeping an eye on?" "Yes. My grandfather died in this crease hotel 60 years ago. He left something behind, something my family has been searching for ever since." His eyes flicked to the wall cavity, visible through the open door. "I believe you've just found it." Nicole's hands clenched into fists. "I don't know what you're talking about." James smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Please, let's not waste time. The safe in the wall. Howard Ashford's emergency reserve. My family has known about it for decades. We just never knew which room he'd hidden it in." "If you've known about it for decades, why didn't you buy the building?" "We tried. Multiple times. But the previous owner, a man named Robert Chen, refused to sell. He knew about my grandfather's mysterious death and didn't trust us. When he died in 2015, the property went into probate, hell contested will, multiple claimants. By the time it was finally available, the flood had happened, and the city seized it for auction." James took a small step forward. Nicole didn't move. "I was planning to bid at the auction, but then you surprised everyone. Whit, cents dollars. It was so quaint. I decided to wait and see what you'd do. Clearly, my patience was rewarded." "The bonds are mine," Nicole said. Her voice was stronger than she felt. "I bought this property legally. Everything in it belongs to me." "Legally? Perhaps. Morally? That's more complicated." James pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph of an elderly woman in a hospital bed, tubes and wires everywhere. "My mother. Stage 4 cancer. The bonds you found? They represent money my grandfather embezzled from his business partners in the months before his death. When he died, the partners were ruined. My mother grew up in poverty because of his actions." Nicole's certainty wavered. I'm sorry about your mother, but those bonds should go to making his wrongs right. The families he destroyed deserve restitution." James' voice was reasonable, sympathetic. "I'm not asking you to simply hand them over. I'm prepared to offer you a fair payment. Let's say $2 million cash. That's more money than you'd ever see otherwise, and it allows my family to finally make amends." $2 million. Nicole's mind reeled. It was more than she'd ever dreamed of having, enough to secure Lily's future, enough to escape poverty forever. But something felt wrong. The way James stood, too casual, too confident. The way his eyes kept flicking past her into the room, like he was calculating, planning. "I need time to think," Nicole said. "Of course, but not too much time." James handed her a business card. "Call me by Monday. After that, I'm afraid the offer expires, and my lawyers will have to get involved. You see, I have documentation proving my grandfather owned those bonds. In a legal battle, you'd lose. This way, everyone wins." He walked away, his expensive shoes echoing in the empty hallway. Nicole stood frozen, Lily pressed against her legs. "Mama, was that man bad?" "I don't know, baby." But she thought about the way he'd smiled, about how he'd known exactly which building, which room, which wall, about how his story was smooth and practiced. And she thought about the photograph. "We never found it." J.K.H. James had said his grandfather was J.K.H. James Kenneth Ashford, Howard's father. But if James Kenneth had written that note, why would his grandson be surprised about Nicole finding the safe? Something wasn't adding up. That night, Nicole couldn't sleep. She'd hidden the bonds in the safe and pushed a heavy dresser in front of the wall cavity, but she felt exposed, vulnerable. James knew what she'd found. Who else had he told? At 2 a.m., she finally gave in and called the only person she could think of who might help. Her cousin David lived 3 hours away in Memphis. He was a paralegal at a law firm, dealt with complex financial cases. "Nick, what's wrong?" David's voice was thick with sleep. "I need your help. I found something, and I don't know what to do with it," she explained. Everything the hotel purchase, the safe, the bonds, James Ashford's visit. David was silent. For so long she thought the call had dropped. "David? Nick, listen to me very carefully. Don't touch those bonds again. Don't let anyone else know about them. And don't call anyone else." "Why? What's wrong?" "Bearer bonds from the 1962. That's $2.5 million in essentially untraceable cash. If what you found is real, you've stumbled into something huge. But bearer bonds from that era. There are only a few reasons someone would have had that much in untraceable funds." "What reasons?" David's voice was grim. "Embezzlement, money laundering, tax evasion, or worse, organized crime. Nick, this James Ashford might be legitimate, or he might be someone who's heard about a lost fortune and wants to claim it. Either way, you're in danger." Nicole's throat went dry. "What should I do?" "I'm calling a friend of mine who works in federal financial crimes. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone. I'll be there by morning." After he hung up, Nicole pulled Lily close and stared at the ceiling, listening to every creak and groan of the old building. She'd thought finding the bonds would solve all her problems. Instead, she'd just stepped into something much bigger and more dangerous than she could have imagined. David arrived at dawn with 2 federal agents, a woman named Lisa Chen and a man named Marcus Torres. They were professional, efficient, and clearly took the situation seriously. "Ms. Martinez," Agent Chen said, as they sat in what used to be the hotel's dining room, "I need you to understand something. If these bonds are authentic, you're sitting on one of the largest undocumented cash reserves we've ever encountered. That makes you either very lucky or very much in danger. Possibly both." "I just want to keep my daughter safe," Nicole said. "And I want to know if the bonds are legally mine." Agent Torres pulled out a laptop. "Let's start with authentication. Can you show us the bonds?" Nicole led them to room sept. She moved the dresser aside and opened the safe. The agents photographed everything, handled the bonds with gloves, examined the serial numbers. "These are real," Agent Chen said, after 20 minutes. "U.S. Treasury bearer bonds, series dating from 1960 to 1963. Face value adds up to approximately $2.5 million. Nicole's legs went weak. Part of her had still been hoping it was all a mistake, some elaborate prank. But no, it was real. "Now," Agent Torres continued, "the question is, where did they come from, and are they legitimately yours? The man who visited me, James Ashford, said his grandfather, embezzled from business partners. Agent Chen nodded. We looked into Howard Ashford on the drive up. Interesting history. He made his fortune in manufacturing during and after World War II. Legitimate business, as far as we can tell. But in 1963, several of his partners filed complaints claiming financial irregularities. The case was never resolved, because Ashford died that November. Mysteriously, Nicole added. The history book said mysteriously, single gunshot wound in this very room, Agent Chen confirmed. Ruled a suicide, but the investigation was cursory at best. 1963 was a chaotic time. Kennedy's assassination happened a week later. Local deaths got swept under the rug. So the bonds might be stolen? Nicole's hope crumbled. Possibly. Or they might be legitimately his, hidden away to avoid tax liability or to protect assets during the investigation. Without more information, it's impossible to say. Agent Torres closed his laptop. But here's what we do know. You bought this property legally. Anything discovered inside during your legitimate renovations belongs to you unless it can be proven to be stolen property or proceeds of a crime. And James Ashford's claim? If he wants to contest your ownership, he'll need to provide solid evidence that the bonds were obtained illegally and that he has a legitimate claim to them. Just being the grandson of the original owner isn't enough. Nicole felt a flutter of hope. So I might actually get to keep them? Maybe. But first, we need to secure them and investigate their origin. For your safety and for legal clarity. Agent Chen stood. We're going to need to take the bonds into federal custody while we sort this out. What? No. Panic surged through Nicole. That's all I have. Ms. Martinez, Nicole. Agent Chen's voice was gentle. If these bonds are legitimately yours, you'll get them back. But right now, they're evidence in a potential financial crime investigation. And more importantly, they make you a target. James Ashford already knows. It's not just him we're worried about. Bearer bonds are essentially cash. Untraceable, unmarked. Do you know how many people would kill for even one of those bonds? And you've got 2.45 million worth sitting in a crumbling hotel with no security. David, who'd been quiet until now, touched Nicole's arm. Nick, let them take the bonds. It's the only way to keep you and Lily safe. Nicole looked at the safe, at the bonds that represented the difference between poverty and possibility. Every instinct screamed to hold on, to fight. But she thought of Lily, sleeping upstairs, trusting her mother to keep her safe. Okay, Nicole whispered. Take them. The agents spent the next hour carefully documenting and removing each bond. They sealed them in evidence bags, photographed the safe, measured the wall cavity, took statements from Nicole about how she'd discovered everything. We'll be in touch within a week, Agent Chen promised. In the meantime, do not speak to anyone about this. Not James Ashford. Not reporters if they come sniffing around. No one. And if anyone threatens you or tries to break in, call us immediately. She handed Nicole 2 business cards and a phone number written on the back of one. My personal cell. Day or night. After the agents left with David, Nicole sat alone, in room sept, staring at the empty safe. The bonds were gone. Her one chance at changing everything, locked away in federal evidence. She'd been so close. Lily found her there an hour later. Mama, why are you sad? Nicole pulled her daughter onto her lap. Just thinking, baby, about the treasure? Something like that. The nice lady agent said we'd get it back if it's really ours. Will we? I don't know. Nicole kissed the top of Lily's head. I hope so. Me too. I'd like to have my own room, with a bed that's not on the floor. Nicole's heart broke a little. 8 years old, and her biggest dream was a real bed. You'll have that, baby. I promise. Even if we don't get the bonds back, You'll have your own room, with the best bed I can find. She had no idea how she'd make that promise come true, but she'd figure it out. She always did. That afternoon, Nicole's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb the screen. Nicole Martinez? The voice was young, female, unfamiliar. Who's this? My name is Jennifer Morrison. I'm an investigative reporter with the Clearwater Falls Tribune. I heard you found something interesting in the hotel you bought. I'd love to talk to you about it. Nicole's blood went cold. How did you hear about that? I have sources. Look, I know the federal agents took something from your property this morning. I know it's related to Howard Ashford's death in 1963. And I know James Ashford has been making inquiries about bearer bonds. I can't talk about this. Can't? Or won't? Because here's the thing, Nicole, and I'm saying this as a friend, not a reporter, you're about to become the center of a very public story. James Ashford is preparing to file a lawsuit claiming those bonds belong to his family. He's giving interviews to major outlets. By tomorrow, every news truck in the state will be parked outside your hotel. Nicole's grip on the phone tightened. He said he'd give me until Monday. He lied. His lawsuit was filed this morning. The press release went out an hour ago. Jennifer paused. I can help you. I've been investigating the Ashford family for years. Howard Ashford's death wasn't suicide. And those bonds? They're not embezzled funds. They're something much bigger. What do you mean? Meet me. Tonight. There's a diner en route Quant Cut, 10 miles north of town. Come alone, and I'll tell you everything I know about what you found and why people are willing to kill for it. The line went dead. Nicole sat frozen, her mind spinning. She should call Agent Chen. She should tell David. She should definitely not go to some isolated diner to meet a stranger. But Jennifer Morrison had said people were willing to kill for the bonds, and Nicole needed to know why. The diner was a truck stop relic from the 1970, all cracked vinyl and flickering neon. Nicole had left Lily with Mrs. Kowalski from the library, the only person she trusted, claiming she had an emergency work shift. Jennifer Morrison sat in a corner booth, laptop open, surrounded by papers. She was younger than Nicole had expected, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and ink-stained fingers. You came, Jennifer said. Good. That means you're smart enough to know when you're in over your head. Nicole slid into the booth. You said, Howard Ashford's death wasn't suicide. It wasn't. But to understand why, I need to tell you about what was happening in 1963. Jennifer pulled out a stack of photographs, old, some black and white, some faded color. Howard Ashford wasn't just a businessman, he was a whistleblower. A what? In 1963, he discovered that several of his business partners were laundering money for organized crime. The Castellano family out of Chicago was using legitimate manufacturing companies as fronts. Ashford found out and threatened to go to the FBI. Jennifer spread the photos across the table. They showed Howard Ashford with various men in offices, at construction sites, at and what looked like social events. 2 weeks before his death, Ashford converted his entire fortune to bearer bonds, not to evade taxes, to hide assets from the mob. He was planning to testify, and he knew they'd come after everything he owned. Bearer bonds were untraceable. He could hide them, and his family would be protected. So the bonds are clean? Hope fluttered in Nicole's chest. More than clean. They're evidence. Ashford documented everything before he died. Which companies were fronts, who was being paid off, how the money moved. He hid that documentation with the bonds. Nicole frowned. I didn't find any documentation, just bonds. Jennifer leaned forward. Are you sure? Check again. Ashford was meticulous. If the bonds were there, the records are too. Nicole thought about the safe. She'd been so stunned by the bonds themselves that she hadn't looked carefully at anything else. Had there been papers underneath? A false bottom? Why are you telling me this? What's in it? For you? The truth, Jennifer said simply. I'm writing a book about organized crime in the Midwest during the 60 secondes and 70 secondes. The Ashford case is a major part of it. And James Ashford? She pulled out more photos. He's not Howard's grandson. He's related to the Castellano family. His real name is James Castellano. He changed it legally in 1995, trying to get access to anything Howard left behind. Nicole's blood ran cold. So he's mob-affiliated. The Castellano family fell apart in the 40 secondes and 40 secondes RICO prosecutions, infighting, the usual, but some branches survived. James is trying to rebuild by recovering old assets. And those bonds? They're seed money for a new operation. The federal agents know about James. Yes, but they need proof. That's where you come in. Jennifer closed her laptop. Go back to that safe. Find Ashford's documentation. Give it to the FBI. They'll be able to tie James to his family's old crimes, and you'll be protected as a key witness. Protected? Nicole laughed bitterly. I'm a single mom living in a condemned hotel. How protected can I be? More protected than you are right now. Because, Nicole? Jennifer's expression was grave. James Ashford isn't going to wait for a lawsuit. The Castellano family doesn't operate that way. They'll come for those bonds, and they won't care who's in the way. Nicole drove back to the hotel faster than she should have, her mind racing. She'd left Michael Dorsey and his petty cruelty only to stumble into something so much worse. The hotel was dark when she arrived. She'd left one light on in room 14 always did, so Lily wouldn't be scared if she woke up at Mrs. Kowalski's and worried about their home. The light was off. Nicole's heart hammered. She pulled out her phone, ready to call Agent Chen, but a hand clamped over her mouth from behind. Don't scream, don't run, just listen. The voice was male, young, unfamiliar. Nicole's training from a self-defense class she'd taken years was a go kicked in. She stomped down hard on the man's instep and drove her elbow into his ribs. He grunted and released her. She spun, phone raised like a weapon. Wait. He held up his hands. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm Howard Ashford's great-nephew, the real one. In the dim light from the street, Nicole could see he was young, maybe 25, with Howard Ashford's sharp features from the old photographs. Prove it. He slowly pulled out a wallet and showed her an ID. Thomas Ashford. And a photograph, Howard, with a young boy, maybe 5 years old. That's me, with my great-grandfather. Taken 6 months before he died. I was the last person to see him alive. Nicole lowered the phone slightly. You were 5. How would you remember? Because he gave me something. Made me promise to keep it safe. Until someone found the bonds. Thomas reached into his jacket. Nicole tensed and pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age. On the front, in the same handwriting from the photograph, were the words, "For whoever finds my emergency reserve." The truth is, in room SEP's walls, behind the southwest corner. H.A. There's more in the safe, Nicole whispered. A false bottom. You'll need to remove the base plate. Thomas handed her the envelope. Inside is a key to a safety deposit box at First National Bank. Ashford put his documentation there. The evidence that'll prove James Castellano is lying. That'll show the bonds are legitimate, and that'll finally let my family be free of this secret. Why give it to me? Why not go to the FBI yourself? Thomas's smile was sad. Because I've been in witness protection since I was 7. My parents testified against the Castellano family after Howard died. The mob killed them anyway. I've spent my whole life hiding. But you? He looked at the hotel. You're brave enough to buy a condemned building with your last dollar. You're brave enough to find what everyone else missed. You're brave enough to finish what my great-grandfather started. He pressed the envelope into her hands. End this, please, for all of us. Then, he was gone, disappearing into the shadows, like he'd never been there. Nicole stood alone, holding an envelope that suddenly felt heavier than the world. Nicole didn't sleep that night. She went straight to room sept, pried up the base plate of the safe, exactly as Thomas had described, and found it. A second compartment, hidden beneath the first. Inside were leather-bound ledgers filled with Howard Ashford's careful documentation. Names, dates, wire transfers, meeting notes, photographs of the same men from Jennifer's research, along with dozens more. A complete record of the Castellano family's operation in 1963. And at the bottom, a letter addressed, "To whom it may concern." Nicole read it by flashlight, her hands shaking. "If you're reading this, I'm dead. The Castellanos couldn't allow me to testify, but my death won't silence the truth. The bonds in this safe represent my legitimate fortune, converted to bearer form to protect my family from seizure. Every dollar was earned through honest business before I discovered what my partners truly were. The documentation with these bonds proves that Castellano family operations reached into the highest levels of local and state government. They will try to claim these bonds as their own. They will try to say I was one of them. I was not. I tried to stop them. It cost me my life. To whoever finds this, the bonds are yours. Use them wisely. But more importantly, give this evidence to the authorities. Make sure my death meant something. Howard Ashford, le 13 Novembre, 1963. Nicole carefully repacked everything. Then she called Agent Chen. "It's 4 a.m., the agent answered, but her voice was alert. "I found the rest. The documentation. All of it. Don't touch anything else. We're on our way." But before Nicole could respond, she heard glass breaking downstairs. Not an accident, not the wind. Someone had just smashed their way into the dime. "Someone's here," Nicole whispered. "Someone's in the building. Get out. Now. We're 15 minutes away." Nicole grabbed the ledgers and the envelope and ran. She made it to the stairwell before she heard voices below. "Check every room. She's here somewhere." The voice was cultured, smooth. "James Castellano." "Sir, are you sure about this? If the feds don't have proof. Once we have the documentation, we're clear. Find her." Nicole ran up instead of down. 3rd floor, then 4th. The top floor had been servants' quarters in the hotel's heyday, a warren of small rooms and narrow hallways. She knew them better than anyone. She could hear men on the stairs below. At least 3, maybe more. Nicole ducked into room 42, a tiny storage room with one small window. She'd discovered last week that the window opened onto a section of roof that connected to the building next door, an accounting firm that had somehow survived the flood. She pushed the window open and climbed out, clutching the ledgers to her chest. The drop to the accounting firm's roof was 8 feet. She hung from the windowsill and let go. The landing knocked the wind from her lungs. She lay stunned for a moment, then forced herself to move. Behind her she heard shouting. She went out the window. "You two, stay here. Make sure she doesn't come back. The rest of you, with me." Nicole ran across the roof, jumped to the fire escape of the accounting building, and clattered down the metal stairs. She hit the ground running, the ledgers pressed against her chest like armor. She could see headlights approaching fast. "Please be the agents, please." 2 black SUVs screeched to a stop. Agents Chen and Torres emerged with weapons drawn. "Down! Get down!" Nicole dropped to her knees, still clutching the ledgers. "They're in the hotel. James Castellano, and at least 5 men." More vehicles arrived, police cars. their lights painting the street in red and blue. Within minutes, the street was swarming with law enforcement. Nicole watched from behind one of the SUVs as agents swarmed the hotel. She heard shouting, then saw men being led out in handcuffs. James Castellano came last. Still impeccably dressed even in custody, his face a mask of fury. His eyes found Nicole. Even from 50 feet away, she could feel the hatred in his stare. "This isn't over," he mouthed. Agent Chen helped Nicole to her feet. "You okay?" "I don't know." Nicole handed over the ledgers. "Here. Everything Howard Ashford documented." Agent Torres carefully took the evidence. "Ms. Martinez, you just handed us enough to take down what's left of the Castellano organization and reopen about a dozen cold cases from the 60 secondes. So the bonds are mine?" Agent Chen smiled. "We'll need to complete the investigation, but based on what you found, yes. Those bonds were legitimately Howard Ashford's. He hid them to protect his family from criminals. You found them while legally renovating a property. You are legally own. They're yours." Nicole's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the curb. "They're really mine. They really are. Though," Agent Chen crouched beside her, "you should know that inheritance of this magnitude comes with complications. Taxes, legal fees, people coming out of the woodwork claiming they're owed something. Your life is about to get very complicated. More complicated than living in a condemned hotel while mobsters try to kill me." Agent Chen laughed. "Fair point." As the sun rose over Clearwater Falls, Nicole sat on the curb outside her $0.00 hotel and watched federal agents process a crime scene that was also her home. She thought about Michael Dorsey's mocking voice. "You'll die broke, just like your pathetic mother." She thought about the crowd at the auction, laughing at the single mom making the dumbest investment of her life. She thought about every person who'd dismissed her, pitied her, told her she was making a mistake. And then she thought about Lily, safe at Mrs. Kowalski's house, probably waking up right now and wondering when Mama would come get her. Nicole pulled out her phone and called David. "Nick? What happened? I just got an alert about federal arrests in Clearwater." "It's over," Nicole said. "The bonds are mine. All of it." David was silent for a long moment. "Holy shit." "Yeah." Nicole laughed, surprised by how good it felt. "Holy shit." The news broke before noon. Single mother discovers $245 million. Fortune mob plot foiled. By hotel buyer. Historic bonds. Solve 60 de murder. By afternoon, every news outlet in the country was running the story. By evening, Nicole's phone had 600 missed calls. She ignored all of them except one. Nicole Martinez. The voice was professionally cheerful. "This is Diane Warner, from Warner Financial Management. I understand you've recently come into significant assets. I'd love to discuss wealth management strategies. How did you get this number?" "Oh, it's public record now. The federal filing listed your contact information. Anyway, as I was saying," Nicole hung up. Then she turned off her phone. She, Lily, and David were hiding in a hotel room 2 towns over, a nice one this time, with actual beds and working plumbing. Agent Chen had arranged it, along with security outside their door. "Mama," Lily said, coloring at the table. "The TV people keep saying our name." "I know, baby. Are we famous?" "Something like that." Lily considered this. "Can we get a puppy when we're famous?" David choked on his coffee. Nicole smiled. "Maybe. A big one? Like a golden retriever? We'll see." Over the next few days, the full story emerged in pieces through news reports and Agent Chen's updates. Howard Ashford had been murdered in Room Sept on le 15 Novembre 1963 by 2 men with ties to the Castellano family. They'd made it look like suicide, but failed to find what they were really after: the bonds and documentation. The hotel had been sold immediately after, to a friend of the Castellano family, who'd kept it running while quietly searching for Ashford's hidden fortune. When that owner died in 2015, his son had continued the search. But 8 years of legal battles over the estate had tied the property up until the flood finally forced a public auction. James Castellano had been monitoring the property for decades through various shell companies and associates. When Nicole bought it, he'd decided to let her do the searching, planning to simply take whatever she found. He was now facing federal charges for attempted robbery, conspiracy, and connection to his family's historical crimes. The documentation Nicole found was being used to reopen dozens of cold cases. "What about Thomas Ashford?" Nicole asked during one of Agent Chen's visits. "The great-nephew. Is he safe? He's been relocated again. New identity, new city. But he asked me to give you this." Agent Chen handed over a note. "Thank you for finishing what my great-grandfather started. The truth is finally free. So am I. T. A." Nicole tucked the note into her wallet, next to the photograph of her mother. The lawyers came next. She hired a firm recommended by David, people who specialized in sudden wealth and high-profile cases. They explained the reality of her situation. After federal and state taxes, she'd net approximately $100 million from the bonds. The attorneys would take their percentage. Financial advisors would need to be hired. Trusts would need to be established. Investments would need to be managed. "You'll never have to work again," the lead attorney said. "Neither will your daughter. Neither will your daughter's children. This is generational wealth, Ms. Martinez." But Nicole didn't want to never work again. She wanted to work on something that mattered. 3 weeks after finding the bonds, Nicole returned to Clearwater Falls. She'd been avoiding it, not ready to face the town that had mocked her. But now, she was ready. She drove straight to the falls, Clearwater Grand. It looked the same, water-damaged, condemned, but hers. News vans were parked outside, reporters lounging against their vehicles, waiting for her to appear. Nicole parked and got out. The reporters swarmed immediately. "Ms. Martinez, how does it feel to go from poverty to massive wealth? Will you be leaving Clearwater Falls? What will you do with the money? Have you spoken to your former landlord, Michael Dorsey?" Nicole held up a hand. The questions stopped. She wasn't used to people listening to her, but she was going to have to get used to it. "I'm not leaving Clearwater Falls," she said clearly. "This is my home. This hotel is my home, and I'm going to restore it to what it was meant to be, even though it's condemned, especially because it's condemned. Everything worth having is worth fighting for." She thought of her mother, of Howard Ashford, of every person who'd ever been dismissed and forgotten. This building deserves a second chance. So does this town. She walked into the hotel, leaving the reporters outside. Inside, she found someone waiting in the lobby. Michael Dorsey, her former landlord, looking smaller than she remembered. His expensive suit couldn't hide the defeat in his posture. "Nicole," he started, "I owe you an apology." "Yes, you do. I was wrong about you. About the hotel. About everything." He pulled out an envelope. "This is the rent you paid me over the 3 years you lived in my property, plus interest. I know it doesn't make up for how I treated you, but you're right. It doesn't." Nicole didn't take the envelope. "But I'll tell you what you can do. There are families in this town still struggling after the flood. Families in your buildings who can barely make rent. Use that money to help them. Fix the mold problems. Repair the heaters. Be the landlord you should have been." Michael stared at her. Yes, I'll do that." "Good, because I'll be watching." Nicole walked past him toward the temple stairs. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a hotel to restore." After he left, Nicole stood alone in the ruined lobby. She pulled out her phone new number unlisted, and called the one person who'd been kind to her from the start. "Mrs. Kowalski, it's Nicole Martinez. I have a business proposition for you." 6 months later, the Clearwater Grand Hotel reopened its doors. Not as a luxury hotel. Nicole had decided against that. Instead, it had become something the town needed more: a community center. The first floor housed a job training program, helping people learn skills for the new economy. The second floor was dedicated to affordable co-working space for small businesses and startups. The third floor contained a historical museum, documenting Clearwater Falls' past and Howard Ashford's true story. And the fourth floor, the former servants' quarters, had been converted into temporary housing for families in crisis. Single mothers who'd lost their homes, people recovering from medical bankruptcy, anyone who needed a safe place to rebuild their lives. Mrs. Kowalski ran the historical museum. Tom, from the hardware store, taught construction skills in the job training program. Patricia, from the Historical Society, helped coordinate community events in the restored ballroom. Nicole had kept room kept exactly as she'd found it, safe, still visible in the wall, as part of the museum exhibit. A plaque outside the door told Howard Ashford's story not as a suicide or embezzler, but as a whistleblower who'd given his life trying to do the right thing. The grand reopening drew hundreds of people. News crews were there, of course, but also townspeople who'd once laughed at Nicole's purchase and now wanted to celebrate what she'd created. Jennifer Morrison was there too, her book deal signed, working on a story that would finally tell the truth about Howard Ashford and the Castellano family. And Thomas Ashford under his new identity, which Nicole had been told but immediately forgotten, sent flowers with a card. A building reborn, a truth revealed, a future secured. Thank you. Nicole stood in the restored lobby, Lily at her side, and looked around at the marble floors and Art Deco murals, finally cleaned and preserved. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, their crystal prisms throwing rainbows across the walls, just like she'd imagined. "Mama," Lily tugged her hand, "is this really ours?" "No, baby. It's the town's now. We're just taking care of it." Because Nicole had learned something important in the past 6 months. The money had been life-changing. She and Lily now lived in a beautiful house with actual bedrooms and a yard. Lily went to a good school and had that golden retriever she'd asked for. Nicole had established trust funds and college accounts and all the financial security she'd never dreamed of having. But the real treasure hadn't been the bonds. It had been the courage to raise her hand at an auction when everyone said she was making a mistake. The determination to explore a condemned building when others would have walked away. The strength to stand up to criminals when it would have been easier to surrender. The real treasure had been learning that she was worth more than the world had told her. Michael Dorsey approached, hat literally in hand. He'd been true to his word. His properties had new heaters, fixed plumbing, reasonable rent increases. He'd never be warm, but he was less cruel. "Nicole, I just wanted to say, this is really something special. What you've done here. Thank you, Michael. And I wanted to give you this." He handed her a check. "The money I tried to give you before. But this time, I'm giving it to the Hotel Foundation for the Transitional Housing Program." Nicole took the check. It was for $50, more than all the rent she'd ever paid him. "This is generous. It's overdue." Michael looked around the lobby. "I told you that you'd die broke. I was wrong about a lot of things. But that was the worst." After he left, Agent Chen found Nicole by the punch bowl. "Beautiful work," the agent said, indicating the restored hotel. "Thank you for everything. If you hadn't believed me, you would have figured it out anyway." Agent Chen smiled. "You're tougher than you think. Howard Ashford chose the right person to find his legacy. Have you heard anything about James Castellano's trial? Starts next month. The prosecution is confident. Between the documentation you found And the charges from trying to rob you, he's looking at 20 years minimum. Good. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the crowd mingle and explore. You know what I think about sometimes, Agent Chen said. If you hadn't bought this hotel, if you'd let someone else bid, or if you'd given up after that first night, the bonds would still be hidden. The truth about Howard Ashford would still be buried. The Castellano family would still be operating in the shadows, and I'd still be making wit dollars an hour at the Riverside Diner. Maybe, but you didn't let that stop you. That's the real story here, Nicole. Not the money. The courage. Nicole found David in the museum section, studying the exhibit about the bonds. This is incredible, Nick. What you've built, we've built. You're the one who believed me, who helped me when I had nothing. You never had nothing. You always had fight. David turned to her. Mom would be proud. You proved her right. About what? About taking chances. About not living small. He pulled her into a hug. She'd be so proud. Nicole's eyes burned with tears. Her mother, who'd died with nothing but debt. Her mother, who'd whispered about taking chances on her deathbed. Her mother, whose struggle had shaped Nicole's entire life. This was for her. All of it. As the celebration continued, Nicole slipped away to room sept. The museum was closed for the party, so she was alone with the safe and the story it held. She thought about Howard Ashford, sealing away a fortune to protect his family and expose criminals. He'd died believing he'd failed. But 60 years later, his courage had created a ripple that changed everything. She thought about Thomas Ashford, spending his life in hiding, but still protecting the truth. She thought about her mother, her own daughter, about the chain of choices that led to this moment. Nicole pulled out her phone and snapped a photo of the safe. Then she opened her social media. She'd finally started posting again and added the photo with a caption, 6 months ago, I bought this condemned hotel for $0.00 dollars while people laughed. Today, it reopened as a community center that will serve Clearwater Falls for generations. The treasure I found wasn't money. It was the reminder that we're all worth more than the world tells us. For everyone who's been dismissed, mocked, or told their dreams are impossible, raise your hand anyway. Take the chance. Buy the condemned building. Sometimes the best treasures are hidden in the places everyone else is too afraid to look. The post went viral in hours. Thousands of shares. Tens of thousands of comments from people who'd felt overlooked, dismissed, told they weren't enough. You inspired me to start my business. I applied for the promotion. Everyone said I wasn't ready for. I left the relationship that was destroying me. Thank you for showing us that one brave choice can change everything. Nicole read them. All. Her heart full. 1 year after the auction, Nicole stood in front of a very different crowd. This time she was in Washington, D.C., accepting a Presidential Citizen's Medal for her role in exposing the Castellano family's crimes and creating a model for community-based economic recovery. Lily, now 8, sat in the front row wearing her first dress that wasn't second-hand. David sat beside her, beaming with pride. Mrs. Kowalski, Patricia, Tom, even Jennifer Morrison, they'd all made the trip. The president praised Nicole's courage, her innovation, her commitment to her community. But the words that stuck with Nicole came during a private moment after the ceremony. Ms. Martinez, the president said, shaking her hand, I've read your story. The hotel, the discovery, everything you've built. Can I tell you what impressed me most? Yes, ma'am. It wasn't finding the bonds. It was buying the hotel in the first place. That moment, when everyone was laughing, and you raised your hand anyway, that's the American dream. Not the money you found, but the courage you showed when you had every reason to play it safe. Nicole thought about that on the flight home, about the moment at the auction, about Michael Dorsey's mocking voice and the crowd's laughter. about the whit-cents dollars that had been her entire safety net. She'd been terrified, desperate, making what everyone said was the worst decision of her life. But desperation plus courage equaled transformation. Back in Clearwater Falls, the hotel thrived. 3 families had graduated from the transitional housing program into permanent homes. The job training had placed 40 people in good careers. 5 small businesses had launched from the co-working space. And in Room Sept, thousands of visitors came each year to see the safe and read Howard Ashford's story, to stand in the place where one man's courage had created ripples that lasted 60 years. Nicole expanded her work. She started a foundation that bought struggling properties in flood-damaged communities and converted them into community resources. She gave speeches about sudden wealth and smart investment. She mentored other single mothers trying to build businesses. But her favorite times were still the evenings at the hotel. After the programs closed and the visitors left, she'd walk the halls with Lily, their footsteps echoing in the restored spaces. "Mama," Lily asked one night, "do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't bought the hotel?" "Sometimes." "What do you think?" Nicole considered. "I think we'd still be okay. Because the real treasure wasn't in that safe. It was already in us. The safe just proved it." "What do you mean?" "I mean that courage and determination and love, those were our real fortune. The money just let the world finally see it." Lily thought about this. "So if we lost all the money tomorrow, we'd still be rich?" Nicole pulled her daughter close. The richest people in the world. They stood together in the lobby, looking up at the chandeliers, at the restored murals, at the building that had been written off as worthless and had instead become priceless. Outside, Clearwater Falls stretched into the night. A small town still recovering, still rebuilding, still believing that better days were ahead, because one woman had been brave enough to raise her hand when everyone said she was making a mistake. Because one building had refused to fall despite decades of neglect. Because hidden treasures were waiting for people brave enough to search. And because sometimes, just sometimes, the story everyone says will end in failure becomes the story that changes everything. Nicole pulled out her phone one last time and checked her old social media, the one from before everything changed. Her last post before buying the hotel was still there. "Another day, another shift, another stack of bills I can't pay. When does it get easier?" She typed a new comment on her own old post. "It doesn't get easier. You get braver." Then she took Lily's hand, and they walked out of the Clearwater Grand Hotel into a future that neither of them could have imagined, but both had earned. The building's lights blazed behind them. A beacon in the darkness. Proof that condemned things could be saved, and that sometimes the biggest fortunes were hidden in the places everyone else had given up on. Including people. Especially people. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen. Now, I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.